but game reserve. And through that trip, I was looking for opportunities for mapping. So we showed up to this place, and what it is a reserve for the narrow sand. If you've ever seen The Gods Must Be Crazy, it's the Bushmen. So I was pretty excited to be here. This is where we camped, and I ended up meeting the managers of the reserve, and I said, do you have a map of this place? I mean, how are you going to protect something if you don't know what's there? And they said, no, we don't have a map. We have this little sketch. And I said, how about you let us camp here for free, maybe give us a case of beer, and can we make a map of your place? So in those travels, I had this laptop, a little Garmin e-Trex, and we had the Land Rover so we could drive all their roads. So we spent a week. We mapped water holes, campsites, huts, their whole land, their perimeter. And at the end, we gave them a map that was big enough to hang at the front of their lodge. Nothing fancy, satellite, all done in QGIS and with just a GPS. We do use the card GPS for the roads. So that's all we had. While I was there, I learned a little bit about the population of people that were living there and the situation that the reserve found itself in. So I came to really like the tribe that was there, and I found that they were very much marginalized in Botswana. So minority population, they're getting removed from their ancestral lands. They're historically a nomadic tribe, so they don't really have any ownership of anything. They don't think about this is mine, this is yours, everything is everybody's. And you can imagine in today's world that doesn't really work too well. So I also saw that there was language barriers. The education programs that they had for the majority of Botswanans didn't really fit for the narrow sand. The job opportunities were limited. There were also challenges at the reserve. There was a traditional village there where people could stay and live and continue with their ancestral ways and living the way they wanted to live, but there were societal pressures, and people started moving into the towns to make money, to be able to support their family. The kids wanted to move in. And also the reserve couldn't support these jobs, so they didn't have enough work for the sand to stay on the reserve. Also, on the wildlife side, there was no base census data. They had giraffe and oryx and all kinds of antelope and cheetahs and leopards, but they had no idea how many. So fast forward, 2 years later, I was speaking with the guy who I did the trip with, and we decided we wanted to go back. We had an idea. Let's get some volunteers together who are into conservation, fix the Land Rovers, which is a big step, and go back to Botswana and try to do a project there. We're going to hire the Bushmen as trackers. They're going to bring us out, and we're going to find and map the predators. We chose the predators because the farm was seeing an influx of antelope and zebra and a lot of grazing animals. So they're wondering, where are the predators? Why are there so many of these animals on our land? So our idea was, we'll bring as many volunteers as we can, we'll hire the Bushmen, and we'll just see what happens. So this was in January of this year. The idea was we'll create a sustainable project that will hire the sand, bring them back to their land, and also teach volunteers about conservation. But in reality, I don't know. I had no idea what I was doing. But off we went, So the first thing I could think of, I apologize, there actually are maps of all this stuff, but I put them in and they wouldn't work. And I only had a little bit of time to put this presentation together, so I can show you the maps at the end if you want. So the reserve is fairly large, and how are we going to work this? We had 7 people on the trip. So the first thing we did was I mapped the perimeter of the land, and they have a fence. And we're thinking, if they're losing animals, they're going on the fence, right? So we went around, and we counted 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes, we stopped, and we found a hole, and we would rake it to see what's going in and out. You can see the tracks. So we went around the perimeter, we raked all the different holes, and also set up camera traps where we saw interesting things. So we set all that up at the beginning of the week. And the intention was to go back at the end of the week and check all the tracks and see, are they losing warthog? Are they losing cheetahs? Are they losing leopards? The next step, this is supposed to move. Am I supposed to hit it twice? Yeah. I said to the volunteers, all right, the next week we're going to go out in the Kalahari Desert and we're going to walk around like this and we're going to look for paw prints. All right, let's go. So that's what we did. We were able to hire 2 Bushman trackers. They were 3 groups of 3, and I took the land and I divided it into 5 kind of equal-size transects, and then further broke it down into 3 groups. So how much can someone walk in a day? So we had 3 GPS. We were supposed to have more than that, but we didn't have any money. So we used the car GPS hooked up to an external battery. Don't do that for data collection. And 2 regular Garmin E-Treks. My partner promised he was going to buy a couple more of those, but then he had to buy a trailer because the Land Rover broke down. Anyway, so we went out and we looked for paw prints. So I told the volunteers I would drop them off at the perimeter fence. I said, go west for 3.5 kilometers, go south for 1.5, and then come back east for another, and until you hit the fence. That was our science behind it. So we all kind of did that, and we did spend 5 days in the field with the Bushmen, and I mean, I don't know how they do it, but they're incredible. We would find prints, and we said, a couple of hours going this way. So they were all collecting the data, putting it in the GPS, filling out the logs. So we spent a week doing that. It's pretty fun. The Bushmen, they're pulling a brood, and they're like, chew this for this, and here's some berries you can eat, and you're learning a lot. It's a pretty special experience. So here's some of the volunteers measuring the paw prints, trying to figure out what they are. I think this one's actually a cheetah. We found a lot of African wildcats. We didn't really find any live cats, though. So that was the biggest challenge. Pardon the language. I said, Spaceballs, right? Anybody? Okay. It's one of my favorites. We didn't see any cheetahs. We set up camera traps at the water holes. We saw tracks. We mapped tracks, and it was like we didn't see wildcat. We didn't see cheetahs. We found leopard tracks, which was great because we thought all the farmers had killed the leopards. I was very shocked, but the volunteers were in their 20s, and the tech literacy wasn't really there. I taught them all how to use the GPS, and I thought they would maybe help me at the end of the data processing and everything. No. Battery life is a big issue. Their access to electricity. You'll see, I'll show you my maps. They're not very pretty. I'm making them in the back of a Land Rover plugged into an inverter with no access to satellite for base maps. So basic data visualization. Hyenas were a problem here. Wild animals, we're getting bit by a snake. You're out in the field, and it's very, very remote and wild. It's the Kalahari Desert. So we also found some burrows. So you're walking by, and it could be like a bunch of warthogs, and they would charge you. So, and old Land Rovers. You never know when that thing's going to break down. So we found some challenges, but it went okay. For our next steps, we're going to start recruiting more volunteers. I'm starting a promotional program through universities. It's all ages, so anybody can come. We want to create more projects. So what we found on the reserve is that the infrastructure needs help. The hides are worn out. The roads need work. We need to fill in all those holes we found along the perimeter. We saw a lot of places where animals were coming and going, and we want to keep them on the reserve. And we also want to be able to have time to do a census of all of the wildlife over a longer term. So there's a lot of work to do, but we're pretty much broke. So we're looking for money at the time, so we'll see what happens. And here's our program flyer. So we didn't see any cheetahs, but we did have a camera trap. And we got back to South Africa for our base camp, and we're like going through them all. Like maybe we saw an aardvark on there, and why isn't that playing? Come on. Give it a second. So we're going through all these data, and there was one student who was sometimes German crazy, but he's like, oh, I didn't check my camera trap file. Let me look at this. And I'm just going to go into this. Why doesn't it want to work? Well, either way, you can see the picture. We found a film of this mother cheetah and 3 cubs. We walked right by our camera trap and just all started drinking by the water hole. And it was just like, oh, it worked. Like, they're actually here, you know. So it was kind of this, you come back and it's actually okay. So the tracks weren't lying. So that's it. That's a quickie. How well did I do? Oh, we have plenty of time. All right, thanks. If you want to contact me and make maps, Maggie Maps, put them to you. If you want to make maps and go on a safari, Winter Dodger is the name of the group. So, thank you. Does anybody have any questions?